Winging It.
Yes,
Take two with Larry Eisenstein.
Larry Eisenstein.
We uh, we actually interviewed Larry before, and uh, for some reason the Zoom didn't. We recorded, but it wouldn't convert the video, and we lost 45 minutes of an amazing interview with Larry. So he's kindly joining us again today.
We're heading out to New Brunswick today. Is that correct?
We are talking to Larry. He's in Gagetown, or I think he lives out kind of just outside of Gagetown. I don't know.
Okay.
I think they live in the country outside of the town. Thanks so much for chatting with us. So I'm just going to jump right in. I have a really kind of ball busting question. I understand you were a public school pornographer.
And this is not the first time we've interviewed a pornographer, so don't be abashed. But inquiring minds want to know.
Yeah, well, I just got it in my head to do something with all my drawings, and it was grade 5,
Yeah.
and I don't know, I just stole some photocopy paper, the carbon stuff,
Yeah.
and I started drawing on it, and the drawings looked just as good, and I did a bunch of them, and then I decided to print them. So I snuck into the copy room in the office after school, after baseball practice.
Right.
There was nobody around after baseball practice. So I started rolling them off. I made about 20 copies.
Yeah.
I stapled them together, the pages, and decided to sell them for like $5. And 5 cents.
5 cents. Yeah. I mean, $5. That's pretty.
5 cents.
They probably are worth $5 today.
Oh God, now. Oh my God.
Wish I had one.
Yeah.
I should put it out there.
6.
Yeah. See if any of your school chums still have them.
Yeah. Well, and it got weird when, like after I got a few of them in the hands of my friends, I still had a bunch. I just stuffed them in my class desk.
Yeah.
And I got sick and I got the flu and I went home and I was there for a couple of days. And when I came back to class, my teacher, who was such a dick, Mr. Cassidy, he had dumped everything in my desk because I was notorious for having like just a mess in there all the time.
Yeah.
He just dumped it out. So when I came to class, it was all just sitting there. And he pulled out the magazine.
The magazine.
And then it was like my parents got called in, we're all sitting in the office. And my mom, who's the weirdest lady ever, because she's like, nothing is okay. Everything's wrong and bad.
Yeah.
She just looked at the principal and Mr. Cassidy and just said, so what?
Yeah.
And my dad didn't say a word and we left. They were just stunned. And then I realized that, this is cool. I'm going to keep doing this. Well, one of the things I did was I was super good at super tiny things. So ever since kindergarten, I was drawing this stuff, like, bloody messes and wars and everything.
Yeah.
So small. My teachers couldn't see it. They'd be walking up and down.
Are you serious?
The work. Nobody could see what I was doing.
So you're doing like micro drawing.
Yeah.
So there's an evolution from those small drawings, those small erotic drawings from grade 5 to the small drawings that I saw a number of years ago at your exhibit here in Toronto, which I fell in love with.
Thank you.
And those were the ones that you did with the small dots and the micro pens. Can you tell us a little bit about that journey?
The leap. Well, there was just before you go in, I was looking at some of your earlier work from the early 2000s, which was also very figurative. But there was a transition between that. I mean, so going back to doing these
abstract, semi-abstract, organic, small drawings.
Yeah, well, and then there were those very, anybody who was an artist in the 80s was figurative. But anyway, those were sort of very distinct in and of themselves. But it's like a quantum leap to the work that seems to be your mature and really iconic work for yourself?
Well, to answer you first, Mark, like I always drew small, and so it was natural for me to like just stay at that scale and try to you know, just really go deeper into the refinement of it, you know, just to really, I thought that was my thing, you know, that's who I am. And so I thought, how do I just, you know, make it more wonderful? But like, as far as like the change that happened, I think what happened to me was that when I was doing figurative, and they were small too, but I started to get really unhappy about the work, like in that I didn't enjoy it anymore. I was just I was getting overwhelmed by the material that, you know, I like the subject matter. Every time I dig into narratives, it always seemed to go in this place, and it was always like about you know, difficult things. Like my family are all Holocaust survivors. I was raised to believe that I'm, you know, I got a job to do related to it, to remember, to honor it, to, you know, help it never happen again, you know, and feel my parents' grief and process it, which they couldn't do. They're a disaster. And I don't know, it just started to feel really burdensome. You know, I just said, why am I doing this? I don't even enjoy it. I don't even want to go in my studio and work. I don't want to draw these things anymore. And so I was kind of feeling like, if I can't find a way to just enjoy work, I don't even want to do it anymore. And that's when I kind of flipped over and thought, like, what do I enjoy? And I just enjoyed doodling. And it started there.
Right. Yeah, it's got that feel, the doodle feeling and the spontaneous exploration of organic shapes and stuff like that.
It's like, how do I had to figure out, how can I, you know, just how can I stay with the joy I feel about just my life? My life is okay. You know, I mean, we live in a great time. So, you know, what's the problem? You know, why does my life and my work have to be about this when that doesn't even relate to me? So, you know, I was kind of thinking, what am I when I'm not immersed in all that stuff and thinking it's my responsibility to cope with and work out, and all I could come up with is just the fun of drawing that we all originally experienced. And so then I started to ease my way back into, you know, loving the work. And then it changed, you know, the direction of it. Because like and one great quote that I love from Philip Guston is how he says that when he begins a piece, he starts with a massive array of players in a scenario on a stage. And one by one, like in a courtroom, for example, they all have to, like, one by one, make their case and then leave the stage. So if it's the judge, it's the prosecutor, it's the witness, it's the guard, and eventually the courtroom should be empty. And then he said, at that point, when all these players have had their moment and left, the real things have started happening, because it's no longer about his, you know, his identity. It's about, you know, his just how he's merges with just something more, you know, pure, wonderful. So for me, it's like, you know, I like doing what I do once I've eliminated all these characters and all these issues and stuff.
The narrative. There was a narrative.
It strikes me as like it's a triumph of the ability to be released from something so traumatic, a path so traumatic as that, and the burden of the responsibility that you were carrying, to find that kind of joy at a later stage. I mean, to me, that's something to celebrate.
I just love working. I love working. I just do it all day. I never feel like a block, you know. I just feel like those things, though, were really obstacles. It was always like at hurdles, one after the other. And now it's like I feel, you know, better paths. And I'm bringing more of a narrative. It's surfacing, right? Like now I'm starting to feel, what is this all about and how does it connect? beyond like that personal
Right,
stuff.
right.
Hmm.
Were there any artists you were looking at the time that helped you get from what you were doing to what you quantum leapt to?
Yeah, well, I love Max Ernst.
Oh,
I,
right. Yes, yes. You talked.
I just,
Yeah,
and I like Gustin, and
yeah.
I like Otto Dix. You know, there's
Right. Okay, yeah.
some guys out there that just,
Mm.
you just feel something about overwhelmingly, connected to it. But Max Ernst is just like my favorite because he just did whatever he wanted, in every different direction. And, you know,
Anything goes with Ernst, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
yeah.
I mean, beside the surrealism, it was more than just surrealism, right? It was just this spontaneity, this whatever. You just felt like he just woke up and started working at whatever came to mind at that given
yeah,
moment.
Well, and there's a certain magic to that, right?
Yeah.
yeah.
The piece is so magical.
It's
Yeah.
very earthy and organic. I love that.
Yeah.
Those birds, and it's kind of like you wonder, sometimes you look at some of the pieces and you go, how does that fit into the canon of like contemporary art? Like some of them are like really illustraty, and there's all these kind of gargoyles and weird beasts. It's like, okay, when Harmonious Bush did it, like, okay, we get that era, but why is a 20th century, contemporary
Yeah.
artist, but you go like, no, it's like like a crazy hallucination he has. He's like,
Right. Yeah.
he's tripping.
The surrealists were dealing with dream imagery and stuff, while sort of the kind of early modernists were like how to get rid of figurative and get into abstract and sure shapes and stuff like that. But they were still sticking to imagery. But I loved Ernst's what was that style called where you would put something down, frottage,
Yeah,
and then
yeah,
work with that. I love that.
The
yeah,
textures that he got out of those were just
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
And
It's neat the
basically,
way.
yeah, the paintings basically painted themselves in the sense that
Yeah.
put it down and then, yeah,
Yeah. I remember he said how he started as a kid having like fever dreams, when he was sick or something, and just staring at the floorboards and his mind just seeing this and that, and it just came at him. And I kind of feel like the same with you said, like with the textures, like he would like scratch up and wreck all the surfaces, and then he'd like see what was there, and then he'd work inside and respond to it. It's so neat that somebody who's so clearly listening to the work, because some people online, like I've been reading a couple of this one book about fear of art, I think it's called. It's a really good book. The guy just says, look, your job is just to start listening. The work should tell you pretty much what's next and where you're going if you
yeah,
listen, right? You
yeah.
don't have to be this guy or this woman who's like, I've got to like conceive of like the next thing, or I gotta find a breakthrough that's fresh and it's going to impact people. It's like so exhausting and so depressingly difficult to that kind of approach.
But
So
so heavy. I find,
sorry, Charlie, is your approach similar to that, where you might work spontaneously on something, and the images just emerge from the canvas or from the paper?
Yeah, everything. I don't do any underdrawings ever. It's like once I've done an underdrawing, I kind of feel then I'm just,
yeah,
I'm just, I get bored by the executing that. Then I want to watch TV or listen to a podcast while I'm just sort of like,
yeah,
doing,
yeah,
making marks.
completing the work. Yeah. I mean,
You
it's,
want to feel, I like the
yeah,
tension, like, am I going to wreck it? What's next?
yeah.
Where should I go? Or maybe I put it away, and then I've got 10 of them going, and I'm going, okay, I think I see something there. And then you discover a move that you feel, now that was a good solution. Then you look at the other 10 and go, that would work there, there, and there too. So then suddenly they're all back in play. I like that feeling, because otherwise it feels that, it's something empty about it if it's all pre-planned.
Well, and the drawing is the thing as opposed to drawing something. And I know you do some of that observational kind of drawing of people
Yeah,
and places, right?
I
You're
do.
always sketching and drawing and honing, practicing your observational skills, but that's a different thing.
Yeah, it is. And I'm not that, I don't feel I'm the kind of person who's really good at um invoking a method that's you know, interpretive and fun and playful to knock these things out. I always get kind of literal and I start obsessing about detail and likenesses, and before long I'm kind of feel kind of trapped, and then I kind of want to step away.
Yeah, yeah, for
I
sure.
don't mind, you know, I like doing it. I like doing it in public places.
Yeah,
That
yeah,
brings back
yeah,
that
yeah.
I get excited if I'm on the subway and people are looking, and then I gotta bury my head, or that I've got four
Yeah, yeah,
drawings
yeah,
going
yeah,
at the same
yeah,
time,
yeah.
that person, and oh, they just shut their eyes again. So I'm working over there, and they notice me. Oh, you know, then I'm working over there, and then I enjoy the tension. You know, I like these kind of tensions. Otherwise, I'm bored.
Yes,
So I
yes,
actually work
exactly. Yeah.
better when I'm in public places.
Right. And from live models and just,
Yeah,
a live situation. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
love
but so,
hearing that because whenever you're sitting on the subway or in a museum and you see somebody sketching what's there, or yeah, working in their sketchbook, people are watching, and you always wonder, do they notice us watch? Does the artist notice us watching them? So you are aware. You're very aware of you're being both an observer and observed at the same time.
yeah, and many times people will actually literally apologize for getting up at a station, and other people, like, they will like really pose, like literally
Right,
they'll look
right.
at you and they strike a pose and they smile and like you, and okay, and sometimes you get people who are hostile, and then I'll just simply show them the work. And if they're really super hostile and
Yeah,
that's not working because they're drunk and in a
yeah,
gang,
yeah,
I'll just tear out the piece and say, hey, would you like this?
yeah,
And it's
yeah,
over,
yeah,
right? So,
yeah, yeah.
you know, there's like that kind of dynamic just makes it kind of like thrilling. Like when I was in Mexico,
Yeah, yeah. It's just it's more than the drawing. You're having a social
yeah,
interaction.
Yeah.
Yeah,
anything
When
that gets me out of my head, I'm happy
yeah,
with.
exactly. Yeah.
So are you going to say something about when you were in Mexico?
Yeah, in Mexico, I was shocked because I'd start to draw in bus stations and stuff like that, and people would come up to me and they'd like just so respectful, and they want to see it and talk to children. They come with their children. I was like, I never experienced anything like that here to that level, and I haven't since I came back here.
Right.
And what I would say is like it's pretty amazing how much respect making marks and pictures and stuff has in some parts of the world
Yes,
compared to
yeah, yeah,
here,
yeah.
especially Toronto. Toronto has very little interest in drawing and mark making, very little. Like maybe maybe none. You know, I don't know.
Yeah, it's hard to gauge that, right? I mean, the whole world seemed to me to, um, the last 20 years, I call it, the juxtapose or the beastly aesthetic, where there's a certain kind of drawing that's become really popular, very realistic, illustrative, almost, cartoonish.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, and I think that has to do with younger artists who, I mean, we grew up with the ethics of, or the art school that, you don't need to learn to draw. You don't, get rid of that kind of shit. Right? Learn to be modernist, um, but it
paint,
seems like, what's that?
paint.
Yeah. And then younger artists are maybe discovering. The other thing I'm find interesting, and I think I've mentioned this to you, Mark, that there's a real surge in artists using early 20th century modernists as their model. Clay,
Hmm.
Kandinsky, um, yeah, Magritte, not
Wow.
Magritte, Matisse, just like where it was figurative but becoming abstract. And I don't know, I find that interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. For me, it was the least interesting time. I mean, it was interesting. No, sorry, it was interesting, but I like what came after and what came before, and it was like the link.
Hmm.
But it's interesting to see so much work.
I love
Falling
that
back on
period
that.
of art history, though. There was so much variety. There was so many changes happening so quickly.
There
Yeah.
are
So
absolutely.
much
I got, yeah,
historical
yeah.
upheaval, like with especially with the advent of World War I,
Yeah.
and then economic aftermath, and but in spite of that, there were just so many things happening. And then in the midst of all that, Dadaism happens.
Yeah.
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 Challenged and undermined everything. And I'm fascinated by all that. But even before that, 10, 15 years before that, Picasso and company were undermining, and Matisse were completely undermining the expectations of the art world, of their art world. So anyway, I'm fascinated by that period still, even though I kind of left it behind a bit from like 30 years ago, but I still think it's a really interesting time.
Yeah. I love it too. I know where you're coming from.
Yeah.
It's so inspiring. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Like what can you imagine? Can you just imagine being there in those times? Like,
yeah, and it was a period not just of a singular transition. There were so many transitions. One was transitioning away from a previous transition, like it was like society all over the map. So it wasn't just like we're just rebelling against Renaissance style or naturalistic art. They were rebelling against their own. It was incredible.
Well, it was interesting. There are people like Picasso going back to pre-Renaissance art, to African, and then you had some of the guys really getting into Orientalism, as they called it then. And then and it was all moving towards like totally non-figurative, flat, and there's like
surrealism and bring classicism back. So it was just like we're just rebelling against each other. The closest I can think of something similar is really I think the New York art world and maybe the American art world in the 50s and the 60s and early 70s, when you just went through rapid fire from abstract, from pre-Abex to Abex to the color fields to the pop and everything just happening.
Well, I was going to say Neo Geo. I guess it wasn't Neo Geo then. It was
and minimalism. Just one quick movement after another.
Yeah.
And people and artists like Johns and Rauschenberg, who really just didn't fit a simple category. Were they pop? Were they Abex? Were they something else?
Yeah.
So all of these things just fascinate me. These rapidly transitioning periods. And we kind of live right now, not in a period of transition, but it's just a smorgasbord of so many different styles.
Everything. Yeah.
Well, interesting. Sorry to interrupt you.
Oh no, go ahead.
Well, to that, I often feel like, what's what, and I don't know what to make of any of it. And I kind of retreat into what I do. But the other day I was listening to an assistant curator at the Drawing Center in New York, in Manhattan. And to me, my idea of what people think of drawing is like, I don't know, everything's drawing. Yeah, anything's drawing. And there have been shows like that in the 70s and 80s. But what the assistant curator said is that they have a real structured interpretation of drawing now. It's been going, it's coming from the curator, which is like flat, one-offs, and one of a kind. One-offs, flat, and on paper. And I was like, what? And she was talking about how at a certain point, like, what is it smoke in the air, that you draw with a cigarette? Is that a drawing? Yeah, it's a drawing at some point. So they're trying to kind of recuperate or rehabilitate the concept and reestablish that what is drawing. And it really helps them with their fundraising, I think, because they can define what they're going to exhibit and why, and that people will give them money because they rely on that. But there's a kind of this little interesting move. I know there's a place in London like that. They have a drawing center there too, and they're really honing in on the essence of drawing. And I feel really like relieved that like there's a definition, and like it sort of aligns with like what I have sort of clung to,
there's a theory behind it too. They've got a theory to support it now.
And it's like when you think about all these movements, bang, 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 and everybody it's just and what's, you know, AI and digital and stuff. And then to see that this center, which is supposed to be, you know, right at the edge, saying we're not interested in anything that's reprinted. They don't. I don't think they're interested in prints, let alone digital prints.
Right,
And I was
right.
like, good. You know, I was like, kind of like,
Yeah.
thank you, because mark making, like we all do it. You guys are great drawers, and you love it, and it's an act. It's a very specific thing, and it's work. You
And it's
know, and
very simple. It's simple, right? In the sense that it's, you know, some kind of surface, paper, whatever, bark, and utensil, and your fingers, right? You're using your. I mean, I know
Yeah.
people do drawing with, you know, stylus and this, you know, computer drawing can be just as loose and as subtle, but it's still not the same as ink,
Feel.
charcoal pencil on a surface. You know, they all have different, you know, levels of tooth and absorption, and that's all a real relationship that's going on. And it seems to me, though, I mean, I remember growing up, and to me, drawing was something you did before you did the real work.
yeah.
Right. And then somewhere along the way, 20, 30 years ago, it became the work. It seems to me. I don't know. And I don't know where or when that happened. I mean, I guess obviously people like Crumb, you know, those kind of really famous alternative cartoonists did it. But yeah, it's hard to know where exactly. I don't know if either of you have any idea. Like, I'm not sure where it happened that it became recognized as an art form, and like incredible, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think sometimes these things I think are driven by the market too. Like the market always seems to try to like find an something neglected, you know,
Right.
whether
True.
it's, and that sometimes it's like related to ethnicity or, you know, global region or some kind of craft that's been, you know, it's always something that like, and I think like at some point people start to look at, you know, even, you know, the work of a guy like Crumb and think like, wow, it's great work, and like it hasn't been monetized at all, like, and it's not being celebrated for what it is, and we're not making any money on it. Like somebody else was, I read this one thing, this guy was saying how Andy Warhol is like, you know, defined as this, you know, revolutionary when it comes to media and pop, but Dali did the same thing, you know, back in the 30s and 40s. Like he made himself like in the 50s, he made himself like a whack job, you know,
he was
that
a
everybody,
personality. He became
yeah.
a celebrity,
But they had to kind of like, they had to kind of kill his whole story to be able to like monetize everything that Warhol had done. So sometimes I'm always a little suspicious about
I think
what
pop was a key sort of bridge
we're
to
drawing.
the revival of drawing. I mean, I think also like Robert Longo in New York, and his highly realistic charcoal drawings, right? I mean, that they're phenomenal in terms of just the technique. I mean, some people may not like the content or feel that it's dry, but I'm just amazed by the chops. Like who can, like, to be able to draw that realistically. But that kind of came out of sort of pop, a combination of pop and whatever was going on in the late 70s and early 80s with the return of imagery. And things like that. So I don't know. I'm imagining that these are some of the things that sort of contributed to its return. As well as, you know, the impact of screen printing, which again comes out of pop, and you know, printing in general, which eventually would get people back to the idea of putting something directly on paper, if it comes either from and I'm not talking about digital printing. Obviously, these were more, you know, earlier methods, right? So
like my sex book. Back in grade 5.
Yes, that was, you know what, Larry, that was the that's the missing link.
It was your sex book, but zines in general, absolutely.
I know.
That's true. There's a whole zine culture, right?
Because everybody can self-publish.
Larry is the missing link. Larry, do you work digitally at all? Have you worked with a tablet? Yeah,
I did for a while. Like I used to be a creative director for web. I was a senior designer, and then I went to creative direction, but I was working with all that software stuff, and and then I went on to teaching it, and then I decided that I like pencil 1.0. I'm tired of like
Yeah,
every
yeah.
freaking new iteration driving me crazy, and the keeping up with different platforms. I just said I had enough of that. So I just scan my stuff and process it in Photoshop
Right. Yeah.
for for Instagram or a website. That's about it.
Yeah.
So just the big question is like, what's your work about?
I know it sounds bad, but I'm thinking about dying and being in the ground a lot, and how that moment when I become food, but I'm still kind of aware of me. I see like an intersection, an interaction with the natural world, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like that's my moment where I will like I will be able to collaborate and have input on what's next, what comes,
Right.
what
Right.
what
Right.
gets done with me, and maybe I can influence a little bit. Like that's to me. So actually when I'm working, I'm really kind of I'm trying to channel this, kind of vegetable human. Like I don't know, not like the swamp thing in the comic book or nothing. He's got a
Yeah.
big agenda.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I mean, like just
Yeah.
letting go and I don't know, contributing something to like, you know, like nature's beautiful. Like I
Well,
just
yeah. I mean, when I look at
so
your
something
work,
like that. So
yeah,
it's all vegetable, I
yeah.
guess.
Like when you look at your work, you can feel the life force pulsing through it, right? It's like the very basic life energy is, working its way through, and it feels like a lot of the drawings, especially the bigger ones that are almost like a unified feel, is like there's like a unified feel, like it's like an energy field that's just pulsating with life.
Well, I just whenever I look at what I'm doing, I'm always trying to ask that, feel that. Like, is something happening or not? Like, am I am I like is it something growing here?
Mm,
Something that has a life. Am I participating in something that has an independent life of its own almost?
interesting. Yeah, yeah.
And it always seems to like um just like spawn itself,
You
and
mean
then
like
maybe
the drawing process is like tapping into that
yeah, and then
that
I feel like I feel something. It gives me something back that I want to like support and like feed, and then it grows some more, and then I find like, well, it's the only sustaining loop that I've been able to discover. Everything else seems like kind of a dead end. I just find if I try to do a graphic novel, I never get past the first 10 pages. If I try to almost any project I undertake, eventually I go, this is just such a lame idea, really. Even though it started out like this is really a great idea. After a while, I go, this is just the same thing over and over again. It's this idea that's dictating what I'm doing so that I will be understood and it will have a place out there that will get me. And then I started to think this is about getting attention. And I'm trying to get like advance my career here. So sometimes I just go like, fuck it. I just rather just so
yeah,
so so now my attitude is like I'm just gonna keep doing this and doing this and doing this. And maybe like in the old days, I read that like I think Dave Hickey was saying how in the 50s the reason you got to show at a museum is because collectors were coming to your studio, buying it. They were just telling the guys who they work with about it, and people were talking about it. And then sooner or later, it comes to the attention of a curator, and it goes like, everybody's talking about this. Everybody owns it, is collecting it. I guess it's time for, put on a show here in the museum. There was like like you reach a critical mass where
yes,
it's
yeah,
kind of inevitable.
has
And
its
I
own
kind of
life force.
yeah, so I'd like to build a body of work that has a kind of inevitability about it.
So we're talking about your
What your work is about.
yeah, what the work is about, and we are getting into this idea of there being an energy field, or like you're tapping into a process while you're drawing.
Well, I also feel like what you're saying is that as much as you may try to take the human element out of your work, you can't. Just like you can't take humans out of nature as much as we may try.
Right.
It's very much a part of it.
You're right. Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just think we're kind of grandiose, you know, and I guess maybe I'm just trying to dial that down a little bit, you know. I mean, you grow up and you feel all this pressure to be, you know, unique, and you know, you got to stand out and you got to make your mark, and it's so competitive and everything like that. And it's like when I'm here living rural, I'm like, you know, I don't have that pressure of like running. I don't run into people, so I kind of basically run into myself over and over again. And my mirror is in my studio. It's just my work, and I start to get this impression that, you know, it's just not all about me, you know. I guess and so I'm just trying to like I'm just trying to feel good about what I do, and you know, make good choices, you know. Like I mean I do have I think about what possibilities the work has to, like, you know, say something. And I try to, you know, I try to bring things together that I think can like help support it being meaningful to other people too, right? So that, you know, I'm communicating some of my beliefs and stuff like that. And like, you know, if you know, I really feel we all feel really strong about climate change and what's happening to this planet. And so I think that you know, I think about that a lot in my work. And I, you know, like, you know, biology, and, you know, I talked to you guys the other time about like things that like inspire me, like, you know, the story of Thomas Fairchild, and, you know, the first environmentalist basically, and using plants to help neutralize the smog in industrial London. And how it led, and how Rupert Sheldrake in the present has, like, you know, worked from his work to like try to establish more of our connections so that we can stop feeling so apart from everything, and treat it as an object and exploit it, you know. And so it'd be really, I mean, part of me would love it if we actually figured it out, and we made good choices and stopped making a mess of everything, and made and went with it better. And we're like, I haven't given up on that idea, but and a lot of people haven't, and they're trying very hard. I'm just a little pessimistic.
Well, Sheldrake's a good reference, because your work seems to have that morphogenic feel to it. That
You know, one thing he said was that he didn't believe that there was anything written on our genes. There's no blueprint. There's nothing. He says all you do is, if you're a beech tree, you just access beech tree-ness out there. It's all hanging out there. And then you model it on some fundamental level. And so, like, I think maybe I really like the idea that in my work, I'm trying to, like, you know, reach out, like, know something about what the conversation is in the natural world, you know, that I'm being informed by, you know.
I mean, we tend to think that only humans have dialogue and thought processes, but like, you know, I mean, research is showing trees talk to each other, you know, animals talk to each other. There's more going on. There's more communication going on than, you know, humans would like to, you know, believe, I think.
So I guess that's what it's a lot about, that.
And you really feel that. And it's interesting, this idea about when you well, I wanted to ask also, like, while you're drawing, is there any sense of that kind of meditative, one-pointed, single focus activity, where often you can feel this sort of, you know, you feel almost like weightless, or, you know, it's experience. It's
does it
samadhi. It's just
transport
samadhi in Buddhism, where you merge with everything.
Yeah. Does
Well,
it transport you? Does it take you in a zone when you're
The zone is a good, yeah.
I got a really disappointing answer for that. I disappoint myself, literally. But like my focus is better for distraction. That's just how it's built. That's how I'm built.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
basically, like I've got the TV on the whole
Yeah,
time.
okay. Yeah.
I have movies.
Okay.
I watch sometimes trashy stuff.
Okay.
And because I got to save the good stuff for my wife when we watch
Yeah.
together. I can't watch that. And sometimes documentaries and stuff like that while I'm working, because honestly, if I turn it off and I'm alone while I'm doing this stuff, I will lose my mind.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. I totally get that. I mean, it's company.
Do you hear
it's company.
Do you hear the shows that are like? Are you able to follow the show while you're drawing? I was just gonna say, I find like I have to listen to music when I'm working,
beautiful,
and it's there, and I know it's there. But if I switch to something like a podcast or something narrative, it's gone. I won't know. 10 minutes will go by, and I'll be like, "What the hell did they just say?" Whereas if it's a song, I can hear the tune and it's there, and hours later, I'll still hear the tune in my head. It's interesting.
For me, it's got to be some.
Yeah. So I was going to say, so I understand, like I'm both, like when I'm working, I listen to music, but living pretty much on my own now, I have the TV on a lot more often than I normally would because it's company.
Yeah.
Right. It's just the sense I have, a friend in Ottawa, she talks about how she's always got talk radio on because it's a human voice. I don't think she's listening to the shows as much as someone's talking to you. So there's a sense of.
Well, I like stories like that are crime and people having soap opera kind of drama or whatever. I just find it so goofy and entertaining while I'm working because like I also can't smoke pot. Same thing happens to me. I will just basically lose my mind. And if I'm alone in the work, just doing the work, I just feel like so much is coming in that I can't function almost. I really can't function.
But it's interesting. It doesn't mean that you're still not. It's almost like that stuff is on, but your drawing is the focus because you can focus on the drawing, right? You're still following.
Oh yeah.
But it doesn't have to be as.
It just takes the edge off. It allows me to just not go, too far too quick. I have to be the gatekeeper. I would just lose my mind.
I knew a woman who she was doing her master's degree, and while she was doing the whatever thesis or whatever, she would play The Godfather over and over again. It's just whatever. It was voice in the background. She knew the story, so she didn't have to pay attention.
Wow. That's heavy.
I like the news. Like, I mean, I'll listen to podcasts. Like, on YouTube, a lot of stuff about Ukraine, the war. I listen to a lot of that. For the last year, and so part of my mind is like super like engaged. I don't miss it. I listen to it. I'm listening to the whole thing while I'm working. I just find that like it just keeps a certain part of me really busy, engaged and happy with new information that's intriguing, and it leaves another part of me to just really just be lost and immersed in this process. Otherwise, if my mind gets too involved, then I become really overwhelmed by choices. I just don't know what direction to go, what to choose, because everything starts coming at me.
That's interesting, right? Yeah. I mean, in a way,
the funnel like thing, like some people, like if you think of a cone, and you're looking in it, and you're from the big end, and you're seeing the narrow spot. That's me. If you flip it around and it goes the other way, that's what I have. I have to avoid that. I can't cope with that.
It's interesting because it's not unlike drawing on the subway in that there's energy and commotion around you, but allows you to zone in.
And if you think about drugs, like you know, psychedelics and pot are like, you know, they open you up and you just, it's
Yeah.
expansive. For me, it's
No.
I'm the other guy. You know, when I
Well,
was a
it's like this
younger,
activity helps to block out some of like the what's the word, infinity or all that kind of
yeah,
potential. It's like, okay, sounds are being made, and it helps to, okay, I don't have to worry about that. I just have to worry about this.
yeah. If
That's
it was
brilliant.
drugs, and if with that analogy, I'd be all about amphetamines and cocaine. You know, just the complete
Staying
opposite.
focused, right? Yeah,
Yeah,
energy. Yeah.
we're all different.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, it's interesting. So it'd be interesting though, um, to have a show and then have people ask people what they feel while they're looking at these. If they're picking up a transmission of what you are listening to, because I can go back and um, look at work, and I have memories of all experiences that were going on while I was drawing it,
Yeah.
especially if it takes like a month and there was whatever.
Oh, your work is so like, wow, there's so much going on.
But I mean, Larry, do you do that? Do you look at some of your works and say, "Oh yes, that's when that podcast was on. That's when I was watching that show about blah blah blah," or it's
Can't
gone.
remember.
Right? You can't see it at all, right?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
gone.
Well, I'm not so much about, okay, I remember the topics that were being talked about might, anyway, I don't know.
Yeah,
It's
no,
an
maybe it
interesting
sneaks
thing.
in there. My
Yeah,
Paula,
yeah,
when
yeah,
my
yeah,
wife, when she comes to my work
yeah,
studio and she says, and I'm gonna say,
yeah,
I've done this, take a look at it, or I'll put up a whole bunch of them.
yeah,
She just walks and she sees this, and she's these figures doing this thing, and I'm like,
yeah. Yeah, yeah.
I have no idea, really. And I look and I go, yeah, okay, I didn't know that was going on.
Yeah, that's the
That's
beauty.
fun.
It's the
That's the
beauty of the
funny way.
process, right?
I
Yeah,
mean, I really respect so much people who are capable of the
yeah,
expansive approach, and their
yeah,
work is loaded with narratives that are like, you know, like your work has got so much narrative in your work. You got these stories going on in these places, and a lot of times I feel jealous. Like I feel like, wow, what a natural facility for like,
yeah.
you know, you know, feeling out a story and elaborating it. Like I just get I get stuck when I can't do it.
Well, so I mean, looking at your work, what happens for me is I'm immediately aware of biology, my physical, and on a cellular level, right? On that morphogenic level, like it really brings things down to the essence of like essence of all things, right? And it could be thoughts, emotions, physical things. They're all in there.
And there's a narrative going on. It's
Thank you.
just not, multiple pages, right? It's a narrative in sort of in
Micro
brief.
narrative.
Micro narrative, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm glad. I'm really
Yeah.
glad because I know like I'm going like while I'm working, I like I said, I'm watching these things and I'm listening.
Yeah.
I have a lot of feelings that are surfacing. I just find that if I try to elaborate it intentionally, that you know, I don't know how to avoid the tropes and the filters that, you know,
Yeah.
that we are engaged when we're communicating. So like I feel like I try to I'm hoping that these are you know, this sort of expression that I have in my drawing is carrying the weight of those emotions and thought processes in the weight of the line, the texture of the, you know, how the ink is interacting with the paper, and the, you know, the movement of this, you know, the stroke, all those things. You feel like now that's got to tell more about me than anything, is what the you know, that's how you know,
Oh,
I went from these little lines then to, you know, these lines now. And
Well, you're
once,
like
once
you're the conduit for
yeah,
all that coming into shape. I'm going to ask you a question that's
okay.
and it's going to loop back to something you said to me years ago. And I said, "Do you see or feel yourself in the drawings? Like
No,
when you look at them, do you get a sense that Oh, that's interesting because I don't know if you remember that moment when you drove me home from one of my abstract shows and you said, I don't see you in this.
Yeah, I remember that.
And the next day, I put up a big piece of paper and started those large narrative drawings, which led to the way I work now. And it was so profound because when I look at those, like the new works, I see me. I see everything about me. It's not about me. Like they're not stories about me, but I feel like I can see my personality, my experiences in the work. The works look like the way I think and feel. I don't know.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
But you don't feel that way, Larry? You don't feel that way. These works are so depersonalized that
No, well, I guess I do feel kind of like Charles, you're saying, Charles, in that like when I look at it, I don't see anybody else.
Exactly.
You know?
Right. Yes.
So that must be
Yes.
me,
Yes.
because
Yes.
like
Yeah.
all right.
I don't know if that's just outright arrogance, to imagine that you're the shape, what you're doing
Well, it is very unique.
is
Like,
different.
like
I just know that the moment it starts to remind me of something, I veer in a different direction. Every time it's like anything, I'm disappointed and I'll just dump it. So I'm always trying to find something I haven't seen before, to me personally.
yeah.
So
Well,
then
yeah.
when I look at them all, I go like, gee, I'm on Instagram all the time. And I go to exhibitions, or we used to. I look at stuff, and I'm going, still really haven't run into my doppelganger.
No.
So then I feel like, okay, that's good. Then maybe I'm charting the right course here. Maybe that's me. So,
Yeah. I mean, definitely it's unique. I mean, probably if you could search 2 billion files online, you maybe find something similar. But yeah, it's a very unique. Like the art is unique, and each drawing is unique, and yeah, that's what's so amazing about it.
I mean,
All
it
right.
would be, yeah, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
No,
I was just gonna segue us into saying goodbye, but if you've got
sure.
something else, no, if you got more to say, I want to hear it.
Okay, well, I do have to say that right now the new phase in my practice. I hate to use the word. I don't know, but the new phase is like I'm thinking now about like about getting it out there.
Yeah.
I'm really excited that you guys have asked me to do this, and this is really good. This is a great. I'm not going to say this is a dry run because this is real and this is really important to me. But this is also helping me figure out how I'm going to try to learn to turn what connections the few I do have and the ones I want to build into, requests for 10 to 15 minutes, maybe studio visits. So I can actually find people out there so I can find the people I find out there who I think are curating work like mine.
Yeah.
In some way, or that I can talk with them and get them to visit and see what I do, and maybe find myself get into some programming.
Yeah,
I really feel like I'm really interested in doing that.
You're ready for that.
But this is a great dry run for me in that regard. But this is a wonderful experience for me. Period. Just to hang out with you guys.
We're really pleased to be part of that. To be part of this moment. Fantastic.
Yes.
Very exciting.
Man. All right, Larry. Thank you so much, and keep in touch. And
when I come back to Toronto, I'll make sure to look you guys up. I'd love to see you.
Oh, that'd be great.
Go for coffee. That'd be really nice.
For sure.
Awesome.
All right.
Cheers. All the best. Good luck with your work.
You. Take care.
Keep going, guys.
Thanks very much.
All right. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.